Hello, beautiful vegans. Welcome to Empowered Vegans, a show that inspires and empowers vegans to live their best lives. Hosted by me, vegan empowerment coach Mariquita Solis. Each week, I feature leading experts in the vegan and plant based world, sharing inspirational stories, practical tips, and empowering conversations. My mission is to support the vegan community in living a fulfilling, joyful life while making a positive impact on the world. And as a transformational coach, I also offer coaching programs to help vegans navigate challenges and create a life that aligns with their values. And I'm really excited today to welcome my guest, Marc Samuel, to our show. And everyone that's watching, I see JJ is watching, everyone else, please give StreamYard permission to use your name and feel free to ask questions and comments because we're going to learn a lot today from Marc. And I was very honored that JJ from Vegan Knowledge subscribed to her channel and hit subscribe for this, please. Has introduced me to Marc, and we're going to hear his story. So welcome, Marc.
Hi, it's fantastic to be here. I'm not sure I'd classify myself as an expert, but I am a guy who's living life deliberately.
All right. Well, you're an expert in my book.
Okay.
So, let's start out with, were you raised vegan or whole food plant-based?
I was not. So my family, I was raised vegetarian, but at a certain point, I just started eating everything because food, yummy. My go-to snack was cheap ham, cheese, and sourdough bread. Takes no time at all to throw on a couple of slices and munch away. But there, but growing up, I was predominantly lacto-ova vegetarian.
Well, that's interesting that you started out that way. I wish I had, but yeah. So, your parents from the States?
No, I was actually born in India, but the church my family belongs to has a strong health message, and so vegetarianism is one of their core tenets. So,
well, that's great. Yeah, I go to Unity Church, and I know the founders were whole food plant-based. So I feel like I'm in alignment with them. Yeah. Unfortunately, the whole congregation's not, but there are some that are. So yeah. So, then you went back to eating meat and animal products. And so what shifted you to, I mean, tell us about your journey and your health.
I started slowing down in college. And I couldn't figure out why. And so the first thing I did was test for mono because I had that when I was younger and it wasn't mono. But my heart would race and I'd go to a cardiologist and he'd say, "There's nothing wrong with your heart. We don't know why it's doing this." It took me 13 years for a triage nurse when I went in for Bell's palsy. Half my face just wasn't functioning. I went in for Bell's palsy and she said, "That's Lyme." And in Connecticut, where I was, that's prevalent. In fact, Lyme is named after Old Lyme, Connecticut, which is kind of the epicenter of that disease. But it took 13 years for them to diagnose that. And by that time, it was, deeply entrenched in my body. But I was so thrilled to finally get a diagnosis. There's so many goals that I wanted to do that I just couldn't. I didn't have the energy for, or the mental capacity, or just I just wasn't functioning. But after I took the medicine, the antibiotics, I didn't get entirely better. So I went back, and they said, your blood work says you definitely have had Lyme, but it could be chronic. However, that's difficult to differentiate from the active MS that your lumbar puncture and MRI shows you have. So I'm sure they're related, but I concurrently had Lyme and MS. So I thought, oh, well, at least now we know. And again, I was thrilled that there's finally a diagnosis. And so I immediately jumped on the steroids and the treatments, which I found out later were something like $8,000 a month. So, I mean, insurance paid, but the treatments weren't very fun. I had to inject myself weekly with a 3-inch needle, which is kind of unnerving, but I've lived through worse things. But the side effects were abysmal. It was like having a really bad flu for 2 or 3 days every week, where my teeth would ache, my head would ache, I'd have a temperature. So like half my life I was in this really distressed state of living. And the medication did exactly what it was supposed to do, which is stabilize and retard the growth of the disease. But that meant that I was getting worse just at a slower rate. And I had all these side effects. So after a few years of that, I took myself off the meds and I felt better. But, every once in a while, my MS would relapse and I'd get.
And what was that like? What's it like for the MS to come back?
At different points in my journey, I've lost basically every single function that the brain is a part of. So I've lost taste, I've lost feeling, I've lost balance, I've lost motor function. There was, I remember the conversation I was having with my father. I can remember where it was and what we were talking about. But we were discussing a business that he and I had started, but I couldn't remember what our business did. My memory had reset. And I lost my childhood. My memory literally reset. So at some point, every single aspect of what the brain controls was compromised.
Gosh.
In addition to being tired, in addition to, the person that pointed out that discovered it could be MS. Well, I had a cancer doctor give me an MRI. It was a friend of my boss who said, I know this guy, he can help you. And so I went to, I think it's Roswell in New York State. And it's a high-powered cancer research institute. And he gave me a thorough MRI, and he said, yeah, probably Lyme, but don't discount MS based on this MRI. But my doctor at the time said, well, your blood work says definitely Lyme, so we're going to go with that. We're going to go with the simplest explanation. But years later, my optometrist said, hey, you've got a field of vision problem that's consistent with optic neuritis. Go see an MS specialist for that. And that's when we started digging into MS. So I've had all these tests over all these years from different experts, and no one, because I had varying symptoms. I mean, that's the full spectrum of symptoms that I had at one point or another. And you add to that my no energy and psychological ramifications of disheartened and despair. So there was a time that I was living in my house that had been foreclosed, because that's what the bank is supposed to do when you're not paying your mortgage, which is fine. I mean, I deserved it. But I was squatting in my own house. Sometimes I could afford electricity and water. Sometimes I couldn't. But I was in that situation for months. And I really wasn't well enough to do anything about it, to work and pay my bills, that sort of thing. And, it got to a point where I had to make a decision. It's either I need to fight for my life or not, because that existence, that, sub-existence that I was in was just not there. There was no hope. And so at that point, I changed my life for the better. I decided life isn't fair, but I'm bigger than that. It gave me time to soul search. And one of the only absolute truth I've ever found is that true happiness comes from selflessness, living beyond yourself. And I figured I can affect the world around me. And I should, but not in the condition that I'm in. So I owe it to myself and the world that I can influence to do something about it. So that's the story is far from over, because I still had MS. But I moved back in with my loving parents, who graciously took care of me. I went to a wonderful vegetarian diet, and I had a roof over my head and food in my belly, and a nice bed to sleep in. And I was stable, and it was great, but I would relapse every now and again. And so I went to my MS doctors, a new group of doctors, and we lived in Connecticut, and so my team of MS doctors were the team of MS doctors at Yale. So these guys are at the forefront of coolitude, and they recommended a different medication, which, I'm all for getting better. So I took rituximab, which is injected, I think, twice a year. And, it kind of did what it was supposed to, which isn't curing the disease, but kind of stabilizing and making sure you don't relapse too often, that kind of stuff, which was great. But in all the years that I'd been sick, I'd done nothing but research, because I'm someone who feels like there's a root to everything. Why we do what we do, there's a root to that. What our symptoms indicate is a cause. And that's what I wanted to find out. And I discovered that there was a doctor in Italy who cured his wife of MS. And he attacked the disease from his specialty, which was a cardiovascular surgeon. And so he found that there were iron deposits in the nervous system, which the white blood cells would attack, and then, um, and that would create the disturbance in the nervous system, which, gave us all the symptoms. So he drained all of the um, blood vessels to flush out the iron, and he found that he had tremendous amount of success, which is awesome. And there are many, many other doctors and sources that have their research and anecdotes as to why and what MS is. But there was a point where I heard about Forks Over Knives, made by Doctors Esselstyn and Campbell. And I watched that, and it clicked. Because if you get rid of the inflammatories, then the body isn't working against the diseases that those inflammatories are fueling. And it can do its thing. So I said, well, this isn't going to hurt anything. And I was at a point in my MS where my balance and coordination were affected. So my motor skills and balance were like, I couldn't go down the hall to the bathroom without holding onto a wall or having a cane with me. Like I couldn't walk. And within days of of switching over to being completely plant-based, I was feeling better. And within a week or so, I could walk again. And here I am now. I think that was about 5 years ago. I'm speaking in full sentences. I can see out of both eyes. My team at Yale are astounded because not only did every single one of my lesions stop growing, but a lot of them not only got smaller, but because they were dormant, that my brain has found new neural pathways. So I can see out of both my eyes now. And my IQ, which had been fairly high before, plummeted, but now I can speak in full sentences. And, I'm sure I'm getting close to back to where I was. And it's because because that information wasn't lost. It's just the neural pathways were hampered because of the lesions. Well, those lesions aren't a problem anymore. And so I have my life back. I can exercise. I keep threatening to get back on my bicycle. I love to cycle. That used to be the my soul's expression. But haven't where I live now. It's not that conducive. It's hilly, traffic, so I haven't really made a full tilt effort to get back on the bike. But I do go to the gym now. I do exercise regularly. I can work full 12-hour construction days if I need to. That didn't used to happen, and that's I stopped taking the medication years ago because it just, even what it promised wasn't good enough for me. And I still get MRIs, and my doctors are still amazed. But to me, that makes perfect sense. Here's an anecdote. Where I used to live in Connecticut, there's several vegan communities. I was spoiled for choice, and just amazing people. And a lot of them were there for the ethics of it. They hate to see billions of innocent animals tortured and killed every year. Some were there for the ecology of it, the ecological benefits of not killing the planet from uh, animal farming. But some were there for health. And there's a clutch of doctors in Hartford area, close to Hartford. They're actual MDs that have their own clinic, and they have their own potlucks and events, and they meet regularly to walk and run. And I mean, these are people that really have embodied the vegan lifestyle that was espoused in Forks Over Knives. And Dr. Esselstyn's son and daughter-in-law are part of that group. In fact, they're the ones that kind of founded it. And so I actually got to sit down with Dr. Esselstyn once. And he studied from his specialty, but he loved learning about the other side effects or the other applications in different health benefits. And so he never specifically studied MS, but he sat with me for like half an hour, and took notes. And I shared with him the doctors that I had gone to and the tests that I have. And I mean, it just makes sense to me. In fact, I had a friend with me who had stage 4 cancer. And the doctor said, that's it. And she said, that's not good enough. And so she became completely plant-based, and she's doing amazingly well. I don't want to speak for her. She's a dear friend that I love with my whole heart. But she recently shared with me that her oncologist said that there's no trace of active cancer. And this is years after she was diagnosed with stage 4. And it's diet and lifestyle counts for a lot. And that's not the only story I have. Like, a lot of my friends have that same story.
Well,
This
tell
is
us another.
not an anomaly. This is the norm. This is what happens when you cut out those inflammatory foods. So I don't eat sugar, and I try and keep my oils low. But if you cut out those things that are bad for you, even though I eat processed food, and you know, I will. There are things I can do to be better, but the takeaway should be, if you get rid of the bad stuff, your body will function like it's supposed to.
What is the inflammatory foods? What would you say for people that
So,
don't know?
all protein derived from animal products. So if you're eating chicken or fish or beef, or like, all of that stuff is bad for you. Milk, dairy, cheese, cream cheese, ice cream that I love so much, I cut that out, and my world brightened. Sugar is a big one. My mom had a test a few years ago. She had an MRI or a PET scan or something like that. And the contrast that they gave her was just sugar water, because it inflamed enough, or it inflamed enough for the test that she was taking to register. And that spoke volumes to me of, this is not good for your body. Because, I mean, I know Americans don't like to hear this, but I mean, if you look at the China study, the American diet is what causes cancer, and all these other health problems, obesity and diabetes, and so many problems. And animal products are a big, big part of that. Americans don't want to give up their meats. Um, that's part of Western culture. But sugar is not talked about, but that's probably the biggest inflammatory there is. I mean, and it's ubiquitous in what we eat. I mean, if you get ketchup or anything you buy from the grocery store, if you don't read the ingredients, you're getting sugar, because that's what's in everything. I read my ingredients, and once I cut that out, the world got brighter. It's a simple thing to do, but that's in Forks Over Knives, they say that oil is, your body doesn't process oil. Also, salt isn't that great for you. So there are simple things. Pardon me?
Oh, I didn't say anything.
simple things that I can control, that when I do control, it makes a profound difference.
Yeah, I think, and just simple, like we're just talking about regular old ice cream. It's just loaded with sugar. I mean, and then I remember, I don't know if it was Forks Over Knives or What the Health or some, I don't know where I read it, or maybe just someone said it. Like we're eating dessert, that's packaged as like a Danish or something for breakfast,
Mm-hmm.
right? Here's a Danish. But it's really dessert. We have dessert in the morning, dessert in the afternoon. It's like this is crazy, and the amount of sugar in this processed foods is just incredible. And people
Well,
are not
it's not
aware.
just things that look like sugar. It's
Mm,
things that you wouldn't suspect. So I mean, if you're getting a soda, yeah, it's going to have sugar in it. But if you're getting ketchup, check the ingredients because it's loaded with sugar. It's all the things that you don't expect have, high fructose corn syrup in it. So,
yeah, and bread, and yes, and there's so many different names for sugar. Remember, like there's so it's we have to be very careful, right? And hopefully that when we're looking at things to purchase, that a list of ingredients is small and recognizable.
one of the things that kind of I took notice of is the chemical composition of alcohol is very similar to sugar. And a lot of people don't realize that when you go off sugar, you should stop drinking alcohol as well. Um, and that a friend of mine who's not vegan pointed that out, but he got rid of sugar in his life and drinking uh, also because he wanted to live a healthier lifestyle. He's a strapping guy who wanted to be more athletic, and so he got rid of sugar, and that's you know it's made a huge difference in his life. But you have to read all the ingredients, and like I said, alcohol doesn't say sugar, but it is sugar. So there are a lot of things like that are out there.
Well, that's good information. Yes, and we actually have a question. We have a lot of great people watching with us, Claudia, and like we said, JJ and Philip. Hey, everyone, thanks for watching, and Stephanie and James. And we got James has a question here. Did established muscle memory serve you, or did you have to start from scratch?
An excellent question, but you're talking to a guy that does not exercise as much as he should. So, as far as established muscle memory, yes, I have some, but I haven't pushed the limits to find out exactly how much of my old life is still there. So, the work I do at the gym, um, that's all familiar, and I can feel how my muscles react, and that's all familiar to me. As far as the finer motor skills, like riding my bike, um, I haven't been on my bike enough to really give you a definitive answer, but I will say that I've lost a lot of the upper end of the practice that I used to have. Like I used to mountain bike and road bike, and when I mountain bike nowadays, I can tell that I'm not quite as quick, not quite as sharp. However, my legs still turn, and I know what my spin is supposed to be like. It's far from efficient, but I understand what's going on. So the muscle memory is there, but it's not. I'll have to say that the base of it is there, but I've lost a lot of the finer points. If that was answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, seems like you had, I mean, my gosh, such a long period of setbacks, and then going down into that deep. I mean, I don't know how you kept up the will to live, So this is all amazing.
Like I said, there came a point where I had to make a decision on just that very thing. But the time that there were several blessings from being forced to be quiet. Kind of like during lockdown for COVID, people weren't working and living at a breakneck pace. They were able to take a step back and reevaluate. So during that time, I did some soul searching, and I wrote to myself, and I figured out who I was and who I wanted to be, why I was, like questions that people should ask themselves, but who has the time for that, or even the understanding to do that? Like, this is who I am, this is why I believe, or what I believe. And I went deeper. I tried to figure out, why is it that I believe the way I do? What is it I want to believe moving forward? And that process got me to a point where I decided that I have more to give life than simply not existing. Like discovering who I was, or defining who I was. Not what was taught to me when I was young, not the friends I have or the community that I live in, but defining who I was and who I wanted to, my ultimate self, who I wanted to be moving forward. That kind of gave me purpose of, and there were so many dreams that I had sitting there in my cold, dark bedroom, staring at the ceiling. And now, because I decided to move forward, I'm at a position where I can start fulfilling those dreams, starting those companies that I wanted to, or the nonprofits that I had dreamt about, and affecting the world larger than myself. And so that's the arc of this, of because I was still, because I was quiet enough to ask myself difficult questions, now I have the self-understanding to do something about it. And one of the biggest hurdles was my health. And now my health is improving daily, and I'm able to actualize a lot of those things. But the motivation came from a core understanding, which if I hadn't have had the time to look deep, then just living with a diminishing brain and pain every week really wasn't worth it.
Yeah, and the universe always sends us. If we're going too fast, the universe will stop us, and slow us down. And it's a beautiful gift to be slowed down, to be forced to slow down sometimes, yeah. Right? And then that's awakening.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yes. Well, so like I'm looking at some comments from Philip. As a former beer brewer, he's saying, I know that sugars are fermented and to create the alcohol, so the chemical structure is very similar and they go hand in hand. Well, that's very interesting and something good to remember. Um, and Claudia is saying, this is so great that your health is daily improving. I wish the very best for your life. You deserve it. Yeah, this is
Thank
amazing. These
you.
are amazing stories, about your healing and your friend's healing with the stage 4 cancer. And my, I have a friend whose father was I think it was stage 4. How many stages are there? Do you know?
4.
4. Okay, yeah. So it was in that stage 4. And oh, I'm trying to leave you here. Let's see. Okay. I hope you can hear me. So he was, I mean, that was it, they said. But he went on a macrobiotic, vegan, whole food, plant based diet
Mm-hmm.
and was here for years and years and years later. So that
Yeah.
saved his life. So, I mean, I don't know why we have gotten away from the fact that what we put in our mouths goes to every part of our body, and that we have 3 times a day to heal our body or to hurt our body, and why we're so disconnected from that. I don't know when we got disconnected from what we eat. It's going to affect us.
One of the things that I don't think people realize is we are made up. Everything that we are is what we have eaten, what is processed through our bodies. And so, I mean, yes, you can get smoke and through your lungs, but everything that we're built out of is, what we eat is the building blocks of who we are. So that's been one of my guiding lights of I I'll never be a great athlete, but if I eat healthily, at least I'm giving myself as good a chance to be my ultimate me, rather than compromising.
Right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And what would you say to people that don't believe it, that don't believe that you could have such a success rate with changing your diet? What would you say to those people?
All of my friends have the exact same story. My I live with my parents, and since I've been completely plant based, I don't think I've gotten sick in 5 years. And well, there was one time that I had COVID like symptoms, um, early on, several years ago. But I can be in the car with people who have the flu and not get it because my immune system works, is not compromised by sugars or plant or by animal based products. And I just don't worry about any of that stuff anymore. Every single one of my friends has that exact same story.
And
Some,
so they're like cancer, and what are your friends, what are their issues
well,
that
I
they've
mean,
healed?
some of my friends are actually competition fitness models and bodybuilders. If you've ever seen Game Changers, that was put out by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jackie Chan. And these are guys that Arnold said, my young career, that he was on steroids because that was the game. But once he switched to being plant based, and there's all the research backing it up, like the athletes, like all the top tier athletes now, all the best Formula One drivers, all the best at, track and field athletes, all the best you name it, the top of their field are all plant-based because of the athletic benefit from it. Recovery time is cut, your energy level goes up, your strength goes up. And that's just, I mean, if for any skeptic out there, watch the Game Changers, because that's not done by indoctrinated vegans. It's done by actual professionals that said, I looked into it. This is my life. And we're going to share other people that are living this same reality. And they're people that you know, like the top athletes that we watch every week. The very best ones are all plant-based.
They are. And I know that when I eat very healthy, like today I had a little flatbread wrap and some melon afterwards. And I ate and I didn't feel sluggish. It was nothing processed. It was all living food. So I felt really like I had so much energy, and it's amazing the difference. And I
Yeah.
know that, like, I know when I'm eating a lot of processed junk, like my fingers will ache, and I know that that's from me not taking care of my body. So it's a good wake up call, right? Your body's going to tell you. If your body's aching, it's like, okay, so what am I putting into my body that I can help my fingers from hurting, or I can help my back from aching, or I can help, when your body's saying something, it's when your body says I'm hurting, why we're ignoring it a lot of times, but we have the power with what we put in our mouths.
To me, symptoms point to something. I was telling a friend of mine who's going through a breakup, like that, I love the hurt of a breakup. Not because it means that I loved that much. That's why I'm hurting. And your body does the same thing. If it's giving you a symptom, there's a reason for that symptom. And often the root is something as simple as food that's really not good for us.
Yes, you're right. So here's another question we got. Did you have a chance to watch Under Our Skin? I think that's the Tick documentary. And if so,
I
did you?
did. I haven't watched the part 2 yet, but that was really fascinating stuff. I had for 13 years, I had undiagnosed Lyme, and I had a lot of those symptoms, and I went to scads of doctors who just couldn't figure it out. So, but thanks for sharing that with me. It's really fascinating to learn the mechanics of why Lyme is able to proliferate so many functions of the bodies. And yeah, it was a fascinating study. But there was a point before I started my MS meds with my Yale doctors. I was working with doctors at University of Connecticut, and they said, before we go into hardcore MS treatment, let's make sure all the Lyme stuff goes away. So I had a PICC line inserted, and every day I had to infuse myself with antibiotics and steroids and all that, whatever cocktail they gave me. But in dealing with my MS, once I started living healthily, eating foods that weren't inflammatory, my body was able to take care of all of the symptoms because it was addressing all of the causes. And that goes with, that's the same thing with Lyme. I have had a doctor in Connecticut who's one of those Hartford doctors. He's plant based and he will prescribe medicines and chemicals if needed. But Lyme is prevalent in Connecticut. And if you treat it just with diet, then your body can naturally take care of the foreign antibodies. If you're not feeding the disease, if you're not inflaming all of the symptoms, your body can take care of it just with diet. And so it sounds simplistic, but I think, and I'm no expert, but if we just eat well, the body will naturally do what it's supposed to do and take care of most every ailment that's out there, from arthritis to cancer.
And so you're eating like whole foods, I mean, and as organic as much as possible, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to
Now
make it clear to everyone.
let's just full disclosure. I am lazy. One
So
of the so there are power bowls that I like. It's basically a can of black or red beans with some greens, whether it's kale or green leaf lettuce, or chop up some onions and tomatoes and uh, vegan cheese and some picante sauce, and it's like I eat out of salad bowls now. That's one meal for me. um, and it's fairly easy to put together and not that expensive. But one of the things that I'm guilty of is right down the road, annoyingly close, is a Smoothie King. And they originated because the founder wanted a healthy alternative. And so the ingredients that they use, like the smoothies that I get, aren't cheap, but it's 1,300 calories of no sugar, presumably organic vegetables and fruits. But I can see everything that goes in there. I get a couple of scoops of vegan protein. There's peanut butter involved, but it's all plant based. And I've got like 1,300 calories, 25 grams of protein, and it's delicious. So I'm on a first name basis with them. It's as far as being deliberate and whole food and no, I could do better.
well, I think we all could do better. I mean, nobody's
Yeah.
nobody's perfect, right? We're just doing the best we can. If we can switch off of those inflammatory foods and just
Yeah.
eat as clean as possible, I mean, we'll see that the effects, right? And the effects of energy are amazing when we're eating living foods. So, and they really give us a lot of energy, and they're not taking away and draining us and making us feel like we ate a big anchor. We can't get up. So
That's
yeah,
true.
we got another comment here. I'm terrified of Lyme. I don't know anything about MS. Your story is very inspiring. Thank you. And do you still go out in the woods, or do you try to avoid, I mean, do you avoid that anymore, or like
No, and I'm sorry if I lost you. I had a call coming in.
Okay.
I do go out in the woods, and I should take more precautions. Wearing long pants, long clothes help. Um, I used to hike and bike in Connecticut all the time. In fact, when I first got Lyme, it was probably because I worked as a landscaper and I also mountain biked almost every day. And just being out there so much is probably what, and not putting on tick repellent or not adequately understanding or even being aware of it. So I just didn't know and didn't care. Now, when I go out, I tend to not go off the trail into the tall brush where ticks hang out. I tend to wear more appropriate clothes so that the ticks don't get on me. You can get another tick bite and get, a different course of Lyme disease, but I'm not as worried about it now because I just do common sense things to mitigate that.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I live in Atlanta area, and
Mhm.
I haven't. I mean, I saw a tick probably 2 or 3 years ago. I go out in the woods all the time, so thank God, rarely see ticks. Um,
Mhm.
and I mean, that's a blessing, yes. And so, yeah, let's see. We got another comment here from Philip. Thank you for sharing your story and providing new information. Yeah, this is fascinating and very hopeful for people that, I mean, I do know people that have Lyme disease and how much they're hurting. So this is just really going to sharing this video, and please everyone share this with your friends and family with a MS too. I mean, to turn our lives around. And I know that we're coming to the end of our hour. So Mark, I mean, this is just fascinating. I'm very honored that you came on here. But do you have any final stop? Let's see. Let me post this, and then I'll let Mark give his final words. Claudia said this was an amazing live stream. I shall share on my Facebook. Thank you both. You're heroes and you rock. Well, Claudia's a hero too. She's working hard to spread the good vegan message out there in France. So we're all doing our part. Every little, everyone's in different pieces of the world, and we're all working hard. So what would you like to say? Anything else, Mark? And where can people reach you if they want to connect with you? Is there anywhere?
I'm on Facebook. I'm happy to connect with anybody. I'm happy to connect with anybody. Um, so recently I've been learning about the subconscious and that who we are is basically 85% is subconscious. And so how we grew up and the God we believe and the culture that we were born into defines us more than we realize. And I would say that with that 15%, we can make conscious decisions to move towards whatever direction we want. And living healthily only affects everything that we are. So that was a happy conscious decision, but being aware of that and understanding, well, I don't want to give up ice cream, or I like cheese too much, or you know, I grew up on hamburgers. If we understand why we believe what we believe and just say, okay, but moving forward, where do I want to go? How do I want to get there? And to me, eating healthily is a no-brainer. It affects everything else I do in life, my energy and my motivation for everything else. So
Well, amen to that. Yes, you're right. Because our cells are affected by everything. I mean, and so everything's coming into our bodies, right? And we're in
Mhm.
charge of our lives. We are the solution to the issues, right? And I remember seeing Bruce Lipton, and he was saying, we go to the doctor and we expect the doctor to fix us, that the doctor would know more about us than we do. So we have to take responsibility like you did and study and learn and work hard on healing. So,
Sadly, doctors, as much as we were taught to believe, don't know very much. A lot of their continuing education comes from what the pharmacies share with them through the drug reps. And I was talking to a doctor just the other day, and he said, "Oh, that's a nice story you've got, but there's no evidence to back it up." And I said, "Well, no, there actually is evidence. You might not be aware of it, but it's out there." And it's it's not a case of confirmation bias as much as being informed. And a lot of doctors don't have time to be informed. You know, school ended for them decades ago, and diet wasn't part of their curriculum. And so they don't, so that's not a part of how they look at health and healthcare. However, there's information out there, and there are doctors that are changing. Half of my family is in the medical industry, and they will. I'm slowly but surely they are moving towards being completely vegetarian, or a lot are plant based, and slowly but surely we're moving in that direction. But there's still a lot of information that hasn't gotten to folks who, you know, for their lives and their careers haven't been exposed to it.
right. Well, we'll keep spreading the message. I mean, thank you for everything you're doing. And I'll put one last comment. I'm going to have to, I could stay on here all day, but anyway, Claudia is saying, my village doctor here in France made an angry face when I said that I'm vegan. Oh my goodness. I know we have these, they're just not, they don't know. It's frustrating, I know, but we're giving you a happy face, Claudia, when you say that you're vegan. So yeah, and this journey that you've shared, Mark, is inspirational, and I hope that everyone reaches out to Mark. And if you can't find him on Facebook or something, reach out to me and I'll get you in contact with him, because we need to share his story for people that need hope, that are struggling with these chronic illnesses. So, and we need to come together. So thank you so much, Mark, for being here, and thank you, JJ, for introducing me, and everyone for watching. This has been inspirational, truly, and I'm very honored.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am honored. I'm just a guy, but I hope that my experiences help others in their journeys as well.
Yes, and definitely. And you're more than just a guy, you're an inspirational guy. So, anyway, thank you so much, everyone. Namaste, vegan, everyone, and have a beautiful afternoon. Bye bye, everybody.